Welcome back to Business English Podcast. Today we're diving into something I know a lot of you out there struggle with.
Yeah.
Professional English for job interviews. And, we're not just talking about the language itself,
Yep.
but how to really present yourself, how to just nail it,
Yeah.
and wow those hiring managers.
It's fascinating to me, really, how much of this boils down to communication style.
Uh-huh.
I mean, think about it. You could have the perfect resume, the ideal experience, but if you can't deliver it effectively, well,
Right.
it just falls flat.
Yeah, it's almost like, I don't know, like a tree falling in the forest and no one's around.
Exactly.
So you're saying even if we have, the perfect qualifications, the perfect answers, it's how we communicate them that really makes or breaks the interview.
Absolutely, and the research backs this up completely.
Oh, really?
Yeah, this masterclass,
Yeah.
we're looking at highlights that something like 68% of hiring managers, they make their decision
Wow.
within the first 4 minutes.
4 minutes.
4 minutes of an interview.
Oh, wow. Okay. And get this, 85% of that decision is based on your voice and your speaking style,
Yeah.
not even the content of your answers.
Wow, 4 minutes. Talk about pressure.
Right.
I mean, so much for taking a moment to settle in. It sounds like first impressions. They really are everything.
They are. They truly are. And that's what makes this deep dive so interesting to me.
Okay.
It's packed with techniques that can really help you make the most of those crucial first few minutes.
Okay, I am all ears. Let's unpack some of those techniques. What's the first thing that kind of jumps out at you from this material?
Well, one of the most impactful things for me was the idea of voice modulation.
Okay.
They call it the confidence curve. And essentially, it's about strategically varying your pitch to create a more engaging and authoritative presence.
So it's not just about what you say, but how you say it.
Exactly. Imagine you're introducing yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
The confidence curve suggests that you start with a slightly lower pitch. Then, as you talk about your achievements, your key achievements, you raise it. Oh, interesting.
And finally, you bring it back down to project authority as you wrap up.
I can see how that would create a much more dynamic and interesting introduction as opposed to just speaking in a flat monotone the entire time.
Precisely. It's about using your voice like an instrument to captivate your listener.
And speaking of captivating, the material also talks about the power of pauses, or what they call them, power pauses.
Power pauses.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, it's a little bit counterintuitive, but sometimes silence can be even more impactful than words. Strategically placed pauses give your statements weight, and it gives the listener time to really absorb what you're saying.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think so often we feel this need to fill every silence, but those pauses can actually create a sense of anticipation
Mm-hmm.
and make what we say so much more memorable.
Absolutely. It's like a well-placed comma in a sentence, right?
Yeah.
It helps create a natural flow and rhythm that keeps the listener engaged. So we've talked about voice modulation, the power of pauses. What's another key technique for nailing those first impressions?
One thing they emphasize is finding that sweet spot when you're talking about your achievements. You don't want to be overly humble, downplay your accomplishments, but you also don't want to come off as, arrogant or boastful.
Yeah, that can be such a tough balance to strike. I've definitely been in interviews where I felt like I was either bragging too much or selling myself short.
Yeah.
How do you find that middle ground?
Well, the source material suggests a great strategy, which is to pair each achievement with a learning moment or a collaborative element.
Okay.
That way you're showcasing your accomplishments, but you're also demonstrating humility and a willingness to learn and grow.
That's a brilliant tip. It's about presenting yourself as confident, but also approachable. Someone who is both competent and eager to continue learning.
Exactly. And it also helps to tailor your introduction based on the format of the interview.
Oh.
For instance, they highlight how phone interviews require about 30% more energy because you lose some of that natural enthusiasm when your voice is traveling through phone lines.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's almost like you have to compensate for the lack of, visual cues by injecting more energy into your voice.
Exactly. And then for video interviews, they recommend slowing down your speech by about 10% to account for potential lag time or audio compression.
So it's almost like we have to adjust our communication style for different mediums. Just like you wouldn't write an email the same way you'd write a text message, you need to adapt your approach for phone and video interviews.
Exactly. Each format has its own nuances, and being aware of those can help you make the most of each opportunity.
This is all such great advice. I'm already feeling so much more confident about tackling my next interview.
It's pretty amazing how these what seem like small tweaks to our communication style can make a big difference.
Yeah.
And that brings us to another important aspect of interview success.
Okay, I'm ready. I'm ready for more. What else does this masterclass cover?
Well, once you've nailed that first impression, the next hurdle is effectively describing your experience.
Okay.
And this is where a lot of people, they kind of get tripped up.
Yeah, I can see that. It's like you want to walk this tightrope between sounding, confident and competent, but not just reciting your resume like a robot.
Exactly. You want to be able to showcase your skills and experience in a way that's engaging and memorable.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the key takeaways from this source material is this idea of speaking the language of your industry.
Ooh, tell me more about that. How do we do that effectively?
Well, they call it the industry language ladder.
Okay.
And it's about understanding the specific vocabulary and jargon used in the field that you're applying for
Mm-hmm.
and using those terms appropriately.
So, for example, if I'm applying for a tech job, it would be more impactful to say, I optimized the platform's scalability infrastructure instead of just saying, I helped improve the system.
Exactly. It shows that you understand the nuances of their world
Right.
and that you can communicate effectively with their team. But of course, you don't want to overdo it with the jargon, especially if you're not sure how technical your interviewer is.
Right. You don't want to alienate them with a bunch of, technical terms they might not understand. So how do we find that balance?
The source suggests using what they call the clarity quotient.
Okay.
It's a technique for quickly gauging your interviewer's technical understanding within the first few minutes of the conversation.
Okay.
You can do this by subtly testing the waters with a few industry-specific terms and seeing how they respond.
That's clever. It's like a little, communication test to see how much technical detail you can get away with.
Exactly.
What about those of us who are changing careers or have gaps in our employment history? How do we address those potential, red flags?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's where the bridge technique comes in. Instead of apologizing for those gaps or trying to downplay them, you reframe them as periods of skill building or engagement.
So, for instance, instead of saying I was unemployed for a year, you could say, during that time, I focused on developing my digital marketing skills through freelance projects and online courses.
Exactly. You're turning a potential negative into a positive
Right.
by highlighting your initiative and commitment to continuous learning.
I love that. It's all about reframing those experiences in a way that showcases your resourcefulness and adaptability.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's about telling a story of growth even during those periods of transition.
And speaking of stories, the source material emphasizes something truly fascinating.
Ooh, okay. I'm intrigued. What's that?
It turns out that interviewers, they remember 80% of how you make them feel during the interview,
Oh,
but only 20% of the actual content.
wow. That's a powerful statistic.
Mm.
So it's not just about reciting, facts and figures. It's about creating a connection, leaving a lasting impression.
Precisely. Enthusiasm and passion are contagious. Even if your experience is impressive on paper, if you deliver it with a flat, monotone voice,
Right.
it's not going to resonate.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. I can think back to, teachers in school who I could tell were super passionate about their subject.
Huh?
And I might not remember every single, fact that they taught me, but I remember that feeling.
Exactly. And that brings us to another great technique from the source material.
Hit me with it. I'm ready to take notes.
It's called the experience matrix.
Experience matrix.
Okay. It's a framework for structuring your experiences
Okay.
in a way that highlights both your skills and your potential.
Ooh, I like the sound of that. How does it work?
It's based on this acronym SAR-L.
SAR-L. That sounds more like a fish than a communication technique.
Well, it stands for situation, action, result, and learning.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. So
Yeah.
you're setting the scene, describing the actions that you took, explaining the outcome, and then highlighting what you learned from that experience.
Yeah.
It's almost like creating like a mini story for each of your accomplishments.
You got it. But there's a twist. They add something called future application statements.
Oh, I love a good plot twist. What are those?
Well, it's about connecting your past experiences to the role that you're interviewing for.
Right.
So after you describe a successful project, you could add something like, this experience has prepared me to lead even larger scale initiatives in this role.
That's brilliant. It shows that you've thought about how your past experiences directly translate
Yeah.
to the skills that they're looking for. It's like saying, hey, I'm not just qualified, I'm ready to hit the ground running and make a real impact.
Exactly. And the source material also has a great tip for those dreaded tell me about a time when questions.
Oh, yeah.
They call it story stacking.
Story stacking.
Okay.
Okay, now I'm picturing a tower of, like, colorful blocks, each one representing a different experience.
You're on the right track. It's about preparing in advance by thinking of your experiences as building blocks that you can kind of assemble into different stories to answer those behavioral questions.
You're essentially creating a library of stories in your mind that you can then draw from depending on the question.
Precisely. And it takes away some of that pressure of trying to come up with like perfect examples on the spot.
That is such a game changer. It's like having, a toolkit of stories ready to go, which I think would make anyone feel more confident and prepared for anything they throw at you.
And then they also have this technique called transferable skills translation,
Okay.
which is especially helpful for people who are, changing careers.
Oh, yeah. That's something I'm always curious about. How do you make those seemingly unrelated experiences relevant to a new field?
It's all about highlighting those transferable skills
Okay.
that might not be immediately obvious. For example, a teacher who is transitioning into corporate training could highlight how classroom management skills translate to facilitating workshops.
So it's about connecting those dots for the interviewer and showing how your unique background brings value to their organization, even if it's not a direct match on paper.
Exactly. And that can be a really powerful way to differentiate yourself from other candidates, especially in a competitive job market.
This is all such great advice. I'm
Yeah.
feeling so much more prepared to tackle those tricky interview questions.
Yeah, it's amazing how much these techniques can boost your confidence.
Yeah.
And we're just getting started. In our next segment, we're going to explore how to present your achievements in a way that's both compelling and authentic.
Ooh, I can't wait. This has been such a fascinating deep dive so far, and I'm very eager to hear more about how to really make, our accomplishments shine. Welcome back to Business English Podcast. We've been talking about mastering that art of interview communication, from nailing those first impressions to presenting your experience in a compelling way. But now let's tackle what's often, I think, the most challenging part for a lot of people.
Yeah, right. Showcasing your achievements can feel like navigating a minefield. How do you highlight your successes without sounding like you're bragging, right?
Exactly. It's such a delicate balance to strike. But luckily, this masterclass we're deep diving into has some fantastic advice on how to do just that.
It does.
They call it Achievement Showcase Mastery, and it's all about presenting your accomplishments in a way that's both compelling and genuine.
One technique that really stood out to me is the quantification matrix.
Okay.
And it's all about finding ways to actually measure your accomplishments, even those that might seem intangible.
I'm intrigued. How do you measure something like, say, improving team morale or streamlining a process? I mean, those are great achievements, but they don't necessarily have like a number attached to them.
Well, that's the beauty of this technique. It encourages you to think outside the box and get creative with how you present your impact. So instead of saying, I improved customer satisfaction, you could say, I implemented a new feedback system that led to a 15% increase in positive customer reviews.
Okay, yeah.
You see how adding that quantifiable element just makes it so much more impactful.
Absolutely. It's not just about listing tasks, it's about demonstrating the real-world impact of your work.
Exactly. Data speaks volumes.
It really does.
What else?
Well, they also emphasize showcasing your problem-solving skills, not just the end result.
Yeah.
They call it the achievement journey, and it's about walking the interviewer through your process, highlighting your strategic thinking, your decision-making along the way.
I love that. It's like giving them a peek behind the curtain to see how you operate.
It's not just about what you achieved, but how you got there.
Exactly. They even introduce a technique called PRR Plus, which stands for Problem, Action, Result, plus Replication Potential. You outline the challenge, you describe the steps you took, you explain the positive outcome, and then, this is key, you highlight how those strategies could be applied to future situations.
So you're not just telling a story about the past, you're also showing how your experience makes you even more valuable moving forward.
Exactly. It demonstrates that proactive, adaptable mindset, which is gold in any role.
It really is.
Wow.
Now, I think we've all been there, that moment in an interview where you're trying to highlight your accomplishments without, sounding arrogant.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
It's like walking a tightrope. You don't want to downplay your achievements, but you also don't want to come off like you're, bragging or being a show-off.
Right. Well, the masterclass has a great technique for this too.
Yeah.
They call it the 3C pattern, which is context, challenge, and contribution. So instead of just stating an achievement, you provide context, you explain the challenges you overcame, and then you highlight your specific role in that success.
So it's about telling a story that demonstrates your skills and value without, sounding like you're boasting. It's about framing those achievements in a way that's authentic and engaging.
Precisely. And for those of you who manage teams or work on collaborative projects, they introduce something called the leadership language ladder.
Ooh, a ladder. Okay, tell me more about that. What are the rungs on this ladder?
Well, it's about using language that acknowledges both individual and team contributions.
Okay.
So instead of saying, my team achieved or I achieved, you use phrases that highlight that shared effort.
Right.
And recognize everyone's role in that success.
That makes a lot of sense. It shows you're a team player and you value the contributions of others. It's about sharing the credit and demonstrating a collaborative leadership style.
Exactly. And if you've ever faced a challenging situation at work. Oh, yeah.
And let's be honest, who hasn't?
Right.
They have a framework for talking about how you handled it. They call it the STAR Plus Crisis Framework.
Okay, I'm getting flashbacks to some of my toughest work moments. What's the plus in this framework?
Well, it's about emphasizing that tension and the learning that comes with crisis management. So you describe the situation, the tension or challenge you faced, the action you took, the resolution.
Okay.
And most importantly, what you learned from that experience.
So it's about turning those, potentially negative experiences into positive examples of your problem-solving skills and your resilience.
Right.
It's about showing that you can handle the pressure and come out stronger on the other side.
Exactly. And even if you're in a role where achievements might not be as obvious or quantifiable, they have a technique for that called the impact amplification technique.
Okay.
It's all about finding ways to highlight the significance of your work, even if those contributions might seem, small or subtle. Oh, so even if it's not like a major, quantifiable win, you can still find ways to show that you're making a difference. It's about, reframing those seemingly minor wins and showing their real impact.
Exactly. And then there's the learning leverage technique, which is all about reframing setbacks as learning opportunities.
Right.
It's about showing that you're not afraid of challenges and that you view mistakes as a chance to grow.
Oh, I love that. It's about taking ownership of those less than perfect moments and showing how you learned and grew from them. This masterclass really is like a treasure trove of interview wisdom.
It is. It really is. And just one final point they emphasize is the importance of cultural calibration of achievements.
Yes. Because what might be considered, a huge accomplishment in one culture might be perceived totally differently in another.
Exactly. They have this cultural context compass to help you, adjust your achievement presentation style based on the specific cultural norms of the company you're interviewing with.
So it's about being mindful of those cultural differences and tailoring your communication accordingly.
Wow. This whole deep dive has been so insightful. I mean, it's incredible how much thought and strategy goes into effective interview communication.
It really is. And mastering these techniques can, I think, truly transform your interview performance by being more mindful of our language, our delivery, and our overall communication style. We can present ourselves in a way that's both authentic and impactful.
I'm already feeling so much more confident and prepared for my next interview. And listeners, you can find all of these incredible techniques and so much more in the original episode of English Tips 2025, which we've linked to in the show notes.
And remember, practice makes perfect. The more you use these techniques, the more natural and effortless they'll become. Yeah, don't be afraid to experiment and find what works best for you. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into professional English for job interviews. We hope you found it valuable. And if you did, please subscribe to Business English Podcast, like this episode, and share it with anyone who might benefit from these communication tips.
Yeah, and we'd love to hear your feedback in the comments.
Yes, definitely.
Until next time, keep practicing your English, keep learning, and keep striving for success in all your professional endeavors.
And remember, you've got this.